Hey there, are you comfortable? Not just the blanket-tucked, pillow-piled kind of comfortable, but the quiet sort that lets your mind drift a little. Because tonight's story begins behind a thick wooden door beneath the creak of a gas lantern, and inside a house no one talks about in polite company. But don't worry here, you're only visiting, just observing. The woman living this story is someone else, and her name is Josie. She's 17, or maybe a little more, though nobody in Virginia City asks. Out here age is something you learn not to say aloud, just like where you came from or why your shoes don't fit. This isn't the sort of town that offers second chances, but it is the sort that takes full advantage of those trying to find one. You'll follow Josie into the Silver Queen Brothel, one of the busiest stops in a booming Nevada mining town. But you won't see feather boas or swinging saloon doors tonight. Instead, you'll see how someone survives quietly, cleverly, moment by moment, in a world that demands everything from her and offers almost nothing in return. If you enjoy drifting into untold corners of the past, and maybe finding your own reflections in unexpected places, feel free to like this story or follow for another night. And only if you'd like, let us know, where in the world are you listening from tonight's city country? Or just a small room with a warm blanket I'll be reading. Now let's step inside. The air is warmer than you expect the moment you cross the threshold. Not cozy stale, heavy, a mixture of burnt kerosene floor dust, and an underlying sweetness that tries too hard to cover something else entirely. It takes a second to place its cheap perfume, shaken into the curtains, into the wood, into the skin of everyone inside. And just like that, you're no longer walking freely. You're Josie now, and this is your first night in the Silver Queen. You don't knock. The man who brought you here, short-tempered, red-faced, has already done enough knocking for the day. So you step over the warped wooden sill and press your body into the shadows. The hallway is narrow, painted in colors that may have once been rich, but now resemble dried blood and oversteeped tea. A woman passes without speaking, holding a tray with 2 cracked teacups and an empty bottle. Another stands at the top of the stairs in a robe that's more lace than fabric. Her hair pinned with what might have once been spoons. No one looks at you for long, not because they don't notice, but because they don't want to know. You're not the first girl to walk in through that door with the wrong size shoes and the wrong story about where she's been. You were told there'd be laundry work, folding sheets, carrying buckets, maybe a room of your own. But Virginia City doesn't offer rooms of your own to girls like you, not unless they're rented by the hour and come with rules you haven't learned yet. Still, there's one thing they did tell the truth about. It's warm here. Outside, the wind off the Nevada mountains cuts through wool like wet knives. Inside, the lanterns flicker, but they stay lit. That's enough to stay for now. A woman with gray streaks in her braid calls out your name, not kindly, not cruelly, just efficiently. Josie. You nod. She doesn't ask your last name. She's not interested. She tells you to follow her upstairs. You do. The stairs bow under your weight. They've bowed for thousands of feet before yours. Miners, cowboys, gamblers, girls with ribboned dresses, and girls with ripped ones. The handrail is polished smooth from being gripped too tightly too often. And as you climb, you realize you're holding your breath, though you didn't mean to. At the top of the stairs, there's a corridor that turns in on itself, like a looped ribbon. She leads you down the left-hand wing, passing doors that hang slightly open, and rooms that seem to breathe even when they're empty. You're shown into a room no wider than your wingspan, and barely longer. 3 beds, 2 other girls already inside, 1 basin. You set your bag down, or more precisely the drawstring pouch with a button and a comb and the letter you never mailed. That's your bag. The taller girl doesn't look up. The smaller one, curled like a ribbon on the bed, nearest the wall, gives a slow blink, then turns her face away. No one greets you, but no one turns you out either. You learn quickly not to expect introductions here. There are no first names that stay long. Most of the girls answer to whatever the customers prefer, and in the room they simply don't call each other at all. The basin, she tells you, is for all of you. The water comes from downstairs and it's carried by hand. It's a kindness to leave it less dirty than you found it. It's also a rule. The tall girl, her name might be Sarah, asks if you have soap. You don't. She tosses you a wedge of something gray, rough as pumice, and smelling faintly of lye and pine tar. You nod your thanks. This is your welcome. Later that night, you're given a meal. Not in the saloon below, but in a back kitchen with cracked tiles and a squeaky stove. Stew served lukewarm. Bread mostly crust. But you eat all of it and say nothing. Saying nothing seems to be the language here. Madame Rosie, the woman with the braids, sits in the corner of the kitchen and watches everyone eat. She doesn't speak either, just watches. Her eyes are pale and unreadable like dry glass, and you get the sense she could count every bite you take without looking directly at your plate. At one point, a man with cauliflower ears and a battered apron brings in a crate of bottles. The girls stir. One of them whispers "fresh barrel," and you realize he's the bartender, not a delivery boy. You realize how little you know, and how quickly you'll have to learn. Upstairs again, someone plays a few notes on the upright piano in the parlor, testing the keys. Downstairs, the saloon doors swing open. Laughter floats up. A coin hits the floor. Boots drag. The night has started. But for you, it hasn't. You sit quietly on the edge of the narrow bed, turning the soap over in your hand. It's the first thing anyone's given you in days. That alone makes it precious. Outside the window, the lights of the town flicker like fireflies behind coal dust. Virginia City never really sleeps. And neither will you, not for a while. Not until you understand what's expected, what's permitted, and what's never spoken, but always enforced. Historians still debate just how many women arrived in places like Virginia City, under false promises. Laundry jobs, waitress work, domestic service. Records are spotty. Names were changed often. But what is clear is this: once they arrived, few left quickly. Not because they were trapped in chains, but because the chains were invisible, made of money, shame, dependence, fear. You don't know all that yet. But tonight, lying on the edge of a too small bed, listening to unfamiliar footsteps cross uneven floorboards, you already understand one truth. Whatever happens next, it's going to cost you something, and somehow, you'll pay it anyway. The room feels smaller in the morning. Maybe it's the light gray and sour as leftover tea, or maybe it's the sound of breathing, 6 different rhythms overlapping just slightly out of sync. You lie still, your knees curled up beneath the thin blanket, one hand tucked under your pillow, and the other pressed against the mattress seam as if the bed itself might shift beneath you. Someone coughs, then a rustle of skirts, a groan. Wood creaks under bare feet, and suddenly the quiet is broken. Not shattered, just dented. You don't move yet. In the hierarchy of mornings here, being the last to rise means washing in cold, dirty water. But being the first means being watched. And you're not ready to be watched. You count slowly to 20 before sitting up. Across from you, Sarah is already brushing her hair with wide, practiced strokes, her face blank. The girl on the other mattress, Mary, maybe is still buried beneath a mound of crocheted shawls that smell faintly of clove and mildew. Her leg juts out just enough to show a gray stocking with a mended toe. The window is fogged too high to reach and doesn't open. Maybe it never did. A cloth curtain sags in one corner, half pinned with a hairpin. Outside, the town murmurs horses, wheels, the clatter of buckets. Inside, it's time to take turns. The basin sits on a crate beneath the window, chipped and wobbling, filled with lukewarm water, fetched last night, and now cooled to room chill. No one speaks about the order, but it's understood. Whoever rises first gets the cleanest water. Not that it's ever truly clean, just less cloudy, less gray, less soapy. Sarah finishes first. She stands, wrings out her washcloth with a twist that drips twice onto the floor and steps back to let the next girl forward. You rise, careful not to make the bed squeak. Your hands shake a little as you rinse them, then your face. The water bites your skin not from heat or cold, but from something bitter. Soap residue, maybe, or just dust. You dip, quickly wipe, and step aside. There's no towel. You shake your hands dry. Sarah catches your glance and nods slightly toward your bag, then raises an eyebrow. It takes you a second to realize she means, do you have your own? You don't. Not yet. She doesn't offer hers. In this place, generosity is weighed carefully. A borrowed towel today might mean an expectation tomorrow. Better to stay neutral. You dry your hands on the inside hem of your skirt. By the time Mary shuffles up to the basin, the water is a murky shade of gray with soap bubbles clinging to the edge like algae. She doesn't complain, just splashes her face, blinks, and pats her cheeks with the corner of a sleeve. There's a rhythm here, a delicate economy. 3 beds, 6 girls, 1 basin. It works only because everyone pretends it does. Later that morning, you're shown where to keep your things such as they are. There's a shared drawer for combs and cloths, but Sarah, after a cautious glance, had quietly warned Josie not to leave anything in the communal drawer. Things had a way of vanishing. Instead, she suggested tucking small personal items like a brush or cloth into her sleeve if they could fit. You take that to heart. That evening, you tuck your brush small wooden with half the bristles missing into the sewn-in pocket beneath your right cuff. You've never hidden things before. But here, everything precious is hidden. If it isn't, it's gone. Each girl has her own method. Lily folds her socks and ties them into a bundle under the mattress. Jenny keeps her coin purse inside a hollowed-out book of psalms. Sarah sleeps with her mirror wrapped in a scarf stuffed beneath her pillow. You begin watching them not to imitate, but to understand the system. There are no locks, no real privacy. Your life is stitched into small gestures. How tightly you fold your clothes, how far under the mattress seam you hide your comb, how quickly you claim the basin when it's your turn. Even breath is shared. The air in the room at night turns heavy with perfume sweat and candle smoke. You learn to sleep facing away from the others, not out of distrust, but simply to find space in a room with none. Historians still argue whether the communal sleeping conditions in Wild West brothels were born from economic necessity or design. Some claim it was an intentional method of control, reduce privacy, reduce rebellion. Others argue it was simply math. More beds meant more income. But the result was always the same intimacy without choice, closeness without comfort. One night you're jolted awake by a sob. Just one. A short, sharp breath from the corner bed. It's gone almost instantly, swallowed by the room. No one says anything. You close your eyes again. There are days when you envy the stillness. The way the girls move in silence, braid their hair without mirrors, wash without soap, share air without friction. And there are days when the quiet suffocates you, when you wish someone would just scream. But they don't. And you don't. Instead, you learn small skills. How to fold your shift so it won't wrinkle beneath your pillow. How to twist your hair with 2 fingers and a comb handle. How to soak a cloth in the leftover basin water and scrub your shoes clean without soaking the leather. These become your anchors. Routines in a place where routine is the only defense against erosion. At the end of your first week, you're given your own towel stained but clean enough. Madame Rosie hands it to you without comment. That's how you know you've earned it. Tidbits collected from old brothel records in Nevada mention similar rituals a girl wasn't truly in until she had her own towel and a place to hang it. Some even had specific hooks near the wash basin, numbered with chalk. If your towel stayed on the hook for a month, you were considered the part of the house. If it disappeared, Well, you probably did too. You keep yours folded, tucked under your cot. You don't trust the hook yet. One evening, as the other girls dress for downstairs, Sarah catches your eye and gestures for you to sit beside her. She shows you how to use a piece of string tied around your wrist to count turns at the basin, 2 knots for Tuesday, 3 for Wednesday. That way, if anyone forgets the string, doesn't. It's an elegant system, and one you copy immediately. Later that night, while brushing your hair with the stubby bristle brush from your sleeve, you hear footsteps in the hallway. Male voices, laughter, then the sound of coins sliding across a countertop. The girls finish their makeup without speaking. The smell of old powder and fresh perfume mixes in the air again. Outside the room, the house comes alive. Doors open. Music plays. Someone laughs too loudly, then quiets. Inside, 6 girls breathe together. A breath in, a breath out. You don't talk about it. You just count your turns, fold your towel, and wait for morning when the basin fills again. You don't know where the soap came from. No one tells you. One morning it's simply there on the windowsill, rectangular gray, crumbling at the edges like old brick. It smells faintly of ash and something sour, not unlike pickled vegetables left too long in summer heat. When you pick it up, it flakes slightly, leaving powder on your fingertips. Sarah glanced at the crumbling soap on the sill and gave a small nod, the kind that made it clear Josie was expected to take it as her own. There's no wrapper, no label. This isn't store-bought luxury. This is the kind of soap people make in iron pots behind kitchens, boiled with lye and grease, poured into trays and left to harden in the cellar. You don't ask what kind of fat was used. You don't want to know. What matters is that it cuts through grime. What matters is that it belongs to you. You try it that evening, dipping the edge of your rag into the basin water, only slightly cleaner than yesterday's, and scrubbing your hands first, then your arms. It lathers poorly. Just a sheen of foam clinging to your skin like ghost soap. But it's better than nothing. Better than smelling like fear. The soap stings when it touches your ribs. There are still bruises there. You don't look at them anymore. Just scrub, rinse, repeat. By the time you reach your face, the water is gray again. You lean into the mirror, really just a piece of warped tin nailed to the wall, and catch your reflection in flickering candlelight. You look like a ghost, pale in all the wrong ways, shadows under your eyes like bruises that haven't finished forming. Your hair hangs in a rope down your back, limp and uneven. You reach for the packet Sarah gave you yesterday. Folded brown paper stained at the corners, tied with red thread. Inside beet powder, finely ground and strangely sweet. Not for food, for cheeks, for lips. You dip your finger into it, then pat the color onto your lips. It stains quickly like fruit juice on fabric and smells faintly earthy like crushed garden soil after a storm. You press your lips together and look again. It's not beauty. Not really. It's an approximation, a signal, a shield. The girls downstairs don't wear makeup for glamour. They wear it like a uniform. Rouge on the cheeks, powder on the chest, maybe even a dot near the collarbone. It says, I'm ready. I'm clean enough. I'm for sale, even if my heart isn't. Sarah shows you how to dab a bit of the beet powder on your cheekbones. Just 2 quick taps, then blend with your fingers until it looks like you've been laughing. You haven't. But that's the point. No one laughs for real here, not unless the house is empty. That night you discover the drawer of shared powders, half used, half mixed, mostly unlabeled. Someone's written eyes in pencil on the side of a tin. But when you open it, it smells strongly of starch and vinegar. Another girl swears by a mixture of flour and rice powder that gives her that French look, though you're not sure which French person she's modeling after. You try a little of each. You fail at most. The next day, your face breaks out in tiny red bumps along your jawline. Someone hands you a slice of raw potato to rub on them. You try that too. Historians still argue whether these makeshift beauty regimens were passed down intentionally by women teaching each other how to navigate male expectations, or simply born of trial and error. In truth, it was likely both. There were no beauty schools for girls like you. No magazines, no printed guides. Just whispers rumors, and the occasional trick picked up from a traveling actor or circus girl. Lead powder was still common then, though many brothel women began switching to chalk or rice powder when they could afford it. You couldn't. Not yet. And so you use what's left in the tin, even if it stings your eyes, even if it smells like glue. Some girls wash their hair with vinegar and ash to make it shine under lantern light. Others soak their ends in lemon juice and sit by the window to let the sun lighten it, though the only light here comes from gas lamps and melted candles. You meanwhile try boiling rosemary in water stolen from the kitchen. The smell clings to your skin longer than the soap ever did. The effect is uneven, but Madame Rosie doesn't comment, which means you did well enough. One evening as you're getting ready, Lily pulls a tiny tin from her pocket. Inside is a kind of black paste she applies to her lashes with a matchstick. She sees you watching. Lily had explained, almost amused, that her tiny tin of lash paste was made from burnt sugar, and beeswax meant to draw attention to the eyes, assuming, of course, that anyone was looking there in the first place. You both laugh, quietly. It's the first time you've laughed since arriving. That same night, Jenny tries lining her eyelids with charcoal from the hearth. It smudges instantly, but she swears it makes her look mysterious. The bartender tells her she looks like she got into a fight. She laughs again, louder this time. In moments like these, the makeup becomes more than war paint. It's play, a shared ritual, a fragile glittery thread tying one girl to the next in a place that often feels like a tunnel with no end. But you're still learning. One morning, after scrubbing with your soap and patting on the beet powder, too roughly, Madame Rosie stops you in the hallway. Not harshly, just firmly. Madame Rosie had stopped Josie in the hallway and offered a cool observation that her expression gave away too much fear. She'd told her to soften her gaze because in this business, men didn't pay to see panic. You nod, whatever that means. Later, Sarah explains it means don't make eye contact unless you mean it. It means curve your lips slightly, but not enough to seem eager. It means keep your shoulders back, not hunched. Pretty but indifferent. Warm but distant. A paradox in petticoats. You practice in the mirror that night. Not smiling but not frowning. A face like a door, slightly ajar. Open just enough. By your second week, you've developed a rhythm. Wash, dry, powder, rouge, comb, pin, smile. You don't feel beautiful. But you look ready. And sometimes that's enough. In the brothel ledgers found decades later, historians noticed something strange. The names of the women rarely stayed the same, but the descriptions often did. Red lips, pale skin, dark lashes. It wasn't the person that mattered. It was the presentation. And that presentation, increasingly standardized across the West, became its own kind of armor. No longer just a girl, now a persona. And Josie, you're learning to wear yours well. One night you find yourself alone in the washroom, dipping the soap into a bowl of hot water you fought to carry upstairs yourself. The light flickers. The basin steams. You scrub slowly, not to clean, but to think. Your hands are red. Your knuckles raw, but your lips still stained beet red. By the end of Josie's first week, she understands who holds the true authority inside the Silver Queen. It isn't the bartender with his rough hands, or the piano player who sets the pace for the evening. It's Madame Rosie, a woman who doesn't need to raise her voice because silence does the work for her. She moves through the house like a shadow, cast by the lantern light, slow, deliberate, and impossible to ignore. No one dares to look directly into her eyes for too long, not out of fear exactly, but because they recognize a quiet kind of power that cannot be challenged. Rosie's reputation in Virginia City stretches beyond these walls. The miners who stumble through the door whisper her name with a strange mixture of respect and wariness. The local lawmen greet her with curt nods, sometimes even tipping their hats, because they know that keeping her on their side means avoiding unnecessary trouble. Historical records from towns like this mention how women like Rosie often served as unofficial negotiators, handling disputes, paying fines on behalf of the house, and even arranging for certain deputies to receive a monthly donation to look the other way. This wasn't just about bribery. It was about survival in a town where the law was as rough and unpredictable as the men who dug for silver in the hills. Josie first encounters Rosie's rules one afternoon, just before the saloon below opens for business. The other girls are already preparing each one, adjusting their dresses, reapplying rouge and smoothing their hair. The air in the upstairs hallway smells of candle wax and stale perfume. Rosie appears without announcement, carrying a small ledger tucked under her arm. She scans the line of girls waiting by the staircase, her gaze as sharp as a blade. Then she stops in front of Josie, who tries to hold still under the weight of that pale stare. There's no scolding, no theatrics. Rosie simply speaks her words measured and low, explaining what is expected. Josie is told that before meeting anyone, she must always assess them. Not just their clothing or their coin, but their hands, their face, the set of their jaw. A scar might tell a story. A cough might be a warning. And the most critical rule payment must come first. Always. It's not greed. It's protection and unspoken contract that ensures nothing begins until everything is secured. Josie listens, nodding once, though she doesn't fully understand. Rosie continues describing how quick glances can save a girl's life. A mark on the skin might mean illness. A certain look in a man's eyes might signal danger. Josie realizes then that this house, for all its laughter and music, is built on caution. One careless moment, and everything can unravel. As Rosie moves on to address the others, Sarah leans slightly toward Josie, murmuring a reminder of her own. It isn't meant to frighten, only to teach a woman here must be both polite and ruthless. She must smile while keeping her guard up. It's a balancing act, and Rosie is the master. Later that evening, Josie watches from the staircase as Rosie speaks with a deputy near the entrance. There's no hostility between them. Instead, it feels like a quiet business arrangement, an exchange of pleasantries, a brief nod, and perhaps the slip of a coin. It becomes clear that Rosie is not only the head of the household, but also its shield. Without her, the Silver Queen would not last a week. She manages every detail from the music schedule, to the way the girls dress from the weekly deliveries, to the inevitable negotiations with the town's lawmen. In some mining towns, madams even paid what was essentially an informal insurance to ensure police intervention when needed. Whether it was for safety or simply to keep peace, Rosie's influence extended well beyond these doors. Josie's first test of Rosie's rule comes sooner than she expects. A pair of strangers arrive in the early evening, their boots dusty, their coats reeking of tobacco. One of them is missing 2 fingers. The other wears a crooked hat pulled low over his brow. Rosie catches Josie watching from the hallway and signals her to wait. She approaches the men herself, her voice warm but firm. Coins are counted, arrangements are made, and only when everything is settled does Rosie turn and give Josie the smallest nod. The transaction is not glamorous. It never is. Josie realizes now why Rosie insists on money first. There's no room for negotiation once the door is closed. Everything must be clear from the start. It's not just business, it's safety. And though Josie's stomach knots with unease, she follows the rule exactly her fingers, trembling only slightly as she tucks the payment into the hidden pocket of her dress. That night, as the house quiets, Josie overhears Rosie speaking with Lily and Jenny about a recent raid in another town. A brothel was shut down after refusing to pay the sheriff's fees. The women there were left to fend for themselves, many driven into the streets with nowhere to go. Rosie's voice remains steady, but the message is clear order, and caution are the only things keeping chaos at bay. Historical accounts confirm that many madams in the American West acted as both guardians and enforcers within their own establishments. They weren't just businesswomen. They were negotiators, mediators, and when necessary, protectors. Some even provided a form of community support, paying for medical visits or ensuring that the younger girls had food and clothing. Rosie fits that mold perfectly. She may not show affection, but her authority provides a strange kind of stability in a world that offers none. Josie lies awake later, thinking about Rosie's quiet power. It's not the kind of power that comes with loud commands or heavy fists. It's the kind that shapes a room without a word. And Josie understands, perhaps for the first time, that surviving here isn't just about endurance. It's about reading the invisible lines that Rosie draws and never stepping over them. When morning comes, the house feels different. The rules have settled into Josie's bones. She knows now to watch, to listen, to weigh every interaction like a coin in her hand. She knows that Rosie's nod means safety, while her silence means you're on your own. And as Josie rinses her face in the cloudy basin water, she can almost hear Rosie's voice reminding her again, take the money first, and look carefully always. The first sound Josie hears each afternoon is always the same, a single slightly off-key note drifting up the staircase like a ripple of dust. Then another, then a full chord, hesitant but familiar, rolling out from the battered piano in the saloon below. That's how she knows the day has officially begun. Not by the clock, but by the weight of fingers pressing gently against ivory keys, already worn down to the color of bone. She's never seen the man who plays it. Not clearly. He arrives early and settles into the shadows at the far end of the room, half hidden behind a curtain of stale smoke. His music isn't graceful or showy. It's repetitive, simple, always the same dozen tunes played in slightly different rhythms depending on his mood or the crowd. But the music serves its purpose. It signals that the room is open, the drinks are flowing, and whatever happened the night before has been wiped clean by the morning's basin water and a few dabs of rouge. Josie doesn't go down right away. First she watches from the landing eyes, half-lidded, studying how the others move. There's a rhythm to the saloon, just like there is upstairs, an invisible choreography. The girls drift from table to table, never staying too long, never appearing too eager. They laugh in 3-second bursts, tilt their heads, just so lean forward an inch at a time, and only if it's worth the return. By the time Josie takes her first steps down into the parlor, she already knows how to mimic the gestures. Not perfectly, not yet, but close enough. A smile that doesn't reach the eyes. A hand resting gently on a shoulder before slipping away. A nod that says yes without actually promising anything. The saloon smells different from the bedrooms, more bitter, more alive. Spilled beer and pipe tobacco linger in the air, undercut by the sharper tang of sweat and burnt meat from the kitchen next door. The tables are scratched and sticky, the floorboards warped from too many boots dragging over them. But the customers don't seem to notice. Or maybe they do and simply don't care. Most of them are minors, sunburned and stoop-shouldered fingers blackened around the nails, laughter too loud and too sudden. They slam coins onto tables like they're still striking rocks, hoping something shiny will fall out. Their eyes dart around the room with a kind of desperation, hungry not just for companionship, but for recognition, for escape, for something softer than stone and metal. Josie learns quickly how to move among them, not fast, never frantic, but always flowing. She listens more than she speaks, nods more than she smiles, and laughs only when someone else does first. The other girls tell her it's not about charm, it's about rhythm. Get the timing right, and they'll believe you mean it. One miner, young, maybe 20, stops her near the bar one night. His hands tremble as he reaches into the pocket of his coat and pulls out a small linen pouch. He unties it with exaggerated care like a magician preparing a trick. Inside is a dull, lumpy nugget, the size of a walnut streaked with flecks of something that might be gold. He tells her it's the future. His future. He says he's going to use it to buy a plot of land, maybe open a store, maybe build a home with lace curtains and a gate that squeaks. He holds it out to her like a gift, though he never actually offers it. Josie nods. She tells him it's lovely. She tells him it looks heavy with promise. But she doesn't reach for it. She's seen this before. Later, she tells Sarah about the nugget. Sarah just shrugs and mutters that gold looks more magical when you haven't watched men waste their lives chasing it. The miners who find it rarely keep it. They drink it, gamble it, spend it on things that vanish by morning. Still, Josie thinks about that nugget for days afterward, not because she wanted it, but because of the way he held it. Like it was the only soft thing he had. In some towns, houses like the Silver Queen operated directly above the saloon, a logistical convenience that served both business and survival. Sharing space meant sharing customers' profits and protection. A man could spend his gold dust on whiskey entertainment and a bed upstairs without ever stepping outside. The integration was practical and in many cases deliberate. Josie soon discovers the small brass scale kept behind the bar. It's delicate, almost dainty with weights that clink like coins when dropped. Some of the girls carry pocket scales of their own tiny things wrapped in cloth and kept in their corset stays. Gold dust isn't as reliable as coin, but in a mining town it's sometimes all a man has. And when he pulls it from a pouch, he expects it to be honored. Lily teaches Josie how to weigh it. She shows her how to tell the difference between true dust and cleverly disguised flakes of mica. She explains with a half smile how one wrong measurement can cost a girl half her night's wages. Or worse, put her in debt to Madame Rosie, who keeps very detailed ledgers and very little patience for mistakes. The nights begin to blur after that. One becomes 3, then 5. Josie finds herself humming along to the piano without realizing. She learns the names of the regulars. Not their real ones, just the ones they use here. One is called Red because of his shirt, though it's more brown than crimson now. Another is known as Quiet Bill, not because he says little, but because when he does, everyone listens. There's one customer who never drinks, only orders water. He speaks softly and leaves big tips. Another always asks to hear the same tune on the piano, a slow waltz no one knows the name of. Josie starts calling it the Dust Waltz. Historians still discuss the role of saloon culture in shaping the social dynamics of the American West. These weren't just drinking halls, they were the center of everything business news, entertainment, and negotiation. And the women who worked there, especially in brothels connected to the saloons, became critical parts of that network. Not just performers or servers, but translators of need of tension of what wasn't said. Josie senses that too, that underneath every joke, every offer, every gold nugget handed over with a trembling smile, there is a silence, a loneliness. She learns to navigate it not by speaking, but by listening, by offering comfort without promising more than she can give, by laughing not too much, not too little, by tilting her head, letting the candlelight catch her cheek just enough. By the end of the month, Josie can spot a liar from 10 paces. She can tell when a man is holding fake gold when he's drunk, past the point of kindness, when he's desperate enough to be dangerous. And still she moves among them with grace. Because survival here isn't just about watching. It's about learning the music of the room and never missing a beat. The packet is soft, wrapped in coarse cloth and tied with a bit of frayed string. It looks unassuming, like something you'd use to polish boots or wrap loose buttons. Josie isn't told what's inside. Not at first. just that she should keep it hidden, and never ever let Madame Rosie see it. Lily slips it into her apron pocket, when no one's looking, her face unreadable, her voice low and matter-of-fact. Later, alone behind the wood stove in the girls' quarters, Josie opens it. A scent drifts up sharp earthy with a bitterness that makes her nose twitch. The contents are dried herbs crumbled into dark green flecks and tiny golden specks. She doesn't recognize most of them, but the girls say names like pennyroyal and tansy, with the kind of reverence usually reserved for prayers or poisons. The instructions are vague. Boil water, steep a pinch drink slowly. Don't take it too often. If the cramps come hard, lie down and wait. If the bleeding doesn't stop, don't tell anyone, just try again next time with less. It's not about belief. It's about necessity. In Virginia City, there's no such thing as a personal physician for a girl like Josie. Doctors are for the mine bosses and the bankers' wives. When the women at the Silver Queen need answers, they ask each other. When they need medicine, they turn to what grows in cracks between fences, or what can be folded into handkerchiefs and smuggled in from Carson or Reno. And so Josie brews her first cup late one night, long after the piano music fades and the saloon empties out. She uses a chipped tin cup and water that's been boiled twice. The tea turns dark quickly, a muddy brown that smells like wet bark and distant rain. She sips slowly. Her hands tremble. The taste is terrible, bitter, and metallic, but she forces it down, not because she's sure it will work, but because she has nothing else. No one tells her exactly what to expect. Some girls say it brings peace. Others speak of pain so sharp it leaves them gasping on the floor. Most avoid details altogether, as if naming the outcome makes it real. Over the following days, Josie watches how the others carry their own remedies. One girl keeps hers sewn into the hem of her petticoat, stitched so tightly it would take scissors to reach. Another tucks it inside the hollow handle of her brush. When a new girl arrives and asks openly for help, the older ones only glance at each other, not unkindly but warily. You never know who might be listening. The fear isn't just about Madame Rosie. It's about the men. Some of them think they own more than the hour they paid for. Some get angry when they find a bundle of herbs beneath the mattress. Some believe any attempt to exert control over a woman's own body is theft. From them. So the secrecy becomes part of the ritual. Boil water in the back corner when the others are still asleep. Crush the leaves with the heel of a shoe if no mortar's available. Use a broken spoon to stir. Strain through the edge of an apron if you must. And always, always clean everything thoroughly before morning. Josie learns quickly. She watches. She memorizes. She keeps her own packet under the floorboard, just behind the cracked wall panel near her bed. She counts the days in her head. She keeps track with scratches on the underside of her bed frame, hidden behind a dangling ribbon. Sometimes she hears the others whispering in the middle of the night. Not prayers exactly, but quiet urgings. Please let it pass. Please not this month. Historians still argue whether such remedies were truly effective. Pennyroyal, for instance, was widely believed in the 19th century to act as a contraceptive or abortifacient. But it was also dangerous known to cause liver failure and internal bleeding in high doses. Still, for women with no legal, social, or medical options, it was often the only choice available. Risky, yes, but a risk many chose over the certainty of being trapped, exposed, or punished. Josie never talks about her tea, not even with Lily, who gave her the herbs. Some things are safer unspoken, but there's a kind of language in the way they look at each other now and understanding. Josie notices when another girl starts walking slower, or flinches while bending over. She offers a cup of broth, a softer bedroll, a place near the fire. And when it's her turn again, when the numbers she's counted start creeping too far, she repeats the ritual, not with certainty, but with resolve. The pain isn't always physical. There's also the weight of silence, of pretending nothing's wrong while your body churns and your thoughts spiral. of walking into a room full of laughter and pretending your stomach isn't tied in knots. Josie learns to carry it well. She perfects the art of smoothing her skirt, pinching color into her cheeks, and stepping into the saloon with a nod that says, "Everything is fine, even when it isn't." Some nights she wonders if the others feel the same disconnect. That strange sensation of being alive, but not quite inside your own life. Like you're watching someone else's hands lift the teapot smile at a customer, walk across the creaking floor. Other times she finds peace in small things. The quiet slosh of hot water, the scratch of mint leaves in her fingers, the hiss of steam rising from the pot. Even in fear, there's comfort in knowing the routine. There's a legend one of the girls shares during a rare moment of softness about a woman in another town who carried her herbs inside a hollowed-out Bible carved neatly between the pages of Leviticus and Numbers. It was never found, they say, even after she left. The story makes Josie smile, even if it's probably not true. In towns like Virginia City, truth and rumor often blur. One minute a girl is just a name you've heard. The next, she's a myth, her story repeated at card tables and over gin bottles until it no longer resembles anything real. But the tea, the herbs, the fear that remains. The world outside the brothel walls seems impossibly far away. The bakery, Josie dreams of sunlight on sugar. The smell of rising dough, a shop window with her name in gold paint. Feels like another lifetime. But when she drinks the tea, when she survives another month unmarked and unclaimed, she allows herself one small indulgence, imagining the shape of that life, if only for a moment. She begins to keep notes. Nothing written down too dangerous, but mental lists of recipes she'd like to try. Rosewater scones, cinnamon knots, honey buns shaped like hearts. It gives her something to hold on to. Something that isn't just about survival, but about someday. That, too, is its own form of medicine. You begin to notice the quiet choreography of secrets, not all at once, but gradually as the rhythms of the Silver Queen start to reveal themselves beneath the laughter, the makeup, the routine. Beneath every clean shift and forced smile lies something tucked away, something hidden just out of sight. The room you share still creaks. The same still smells of rosewater and stale tobacco. But now you start to understand what the girls are really doing when they hunch over their trunks, when they linger by the wall panels, when they brush their fingers just a second too long against the underside of the bed frame. Clara, who hums lullabies in German, while she braids her hair, has a tin tea box under the floorboards. Everyone thinks it's just loose buttons and old beads. But one night when the others are out and Josie walks in early from cleaning the hallway, she sees Clara kneeling with the box open, reading a letter written in faded ink. Her eyes are glossy, but she wipes them fast and shuts the lid before anyone can ask. That night Clara laughs a little too loudly and dances a little too wildly, and no one says a word. Lily, older and quieter, keeps her secrets even better. She's the one who never loses her temper, never forgets a name, never spills a drink. But once, while helping her straighten the room, Josie bumps into the small porcelain figurine on Lily's shelf, a worn dancer with a chipped foot. The base is heavier than it should be. When Lily notices, she merely raises an eyebrow, says nothing, and carefully sets the dancer back on its doily. The message is clear, look, but don't touch. Josie doesn't have anything yet. No secret box, no gold coin tucked between mattress seams, no folded map with red circles drawn around distant cities. Her life fits into a shared trunk, a pair of second-hand shoes, and a dream she barely dares to name out loud. But she watches. She listens. She learns. Each girl has a plan, or at least the illusion of one. Maybe it's a real train ticket to San Francisco hidden inside a corset lining. Maybe it's just the address of a cousin who once lived in a cleaner part of town. Someone who might, if everything goes right, offer a room for a few nights and a job that doesn't require rouge. Sometimes the plans are grander. Paris, New York, a bakery by the bay. But most are quieter, smaller. A place to sleep alone. A window with real curtains. A door that locks from the inside. Historians have uncovered records showing that many brothel women kept escape funds or retirement boxes, small stashes of money or valuables hidden in surprisingly clever places. In one 19th century mining town, an abandoned mattress was found stuffed with gold dust sewn into the seams. Another woman in Dodge City was rumored to have sewn silver coins into the hem of every nightdress she owned. It wasn't just about saving. It was about safety. In a world where everything could be taken from you in a moment, money, health, reputation, these hidden caches were often the only insurance a woman had. Josie starts small. A scrap of cloth, a piece of ribbon, and an old matchbox she finds in the alley behind the saloon. She cleans it, lines it with cotton from a discarded bottle stopper, and places it beneath the loose floorboard near her cot. It's empty for now, but not for long. Her first deposit is a single nickel payment for sweeping the saloon stairs after a drunken brawl. Madame didn't have change, so she gave Josie the coin and told her not to expect more. Josie says nothing but keeps it. Not because it's valuable, but because it's the first thing she's earned that she didn't have to give away. She begins to count coins differently after that. Not just what she's paid, but what she can keep. A silver dime for fixing someone's torn corset. A few copper pennies dropped carelessly under a table. A button with an amber center that she later learns is worth more than she expected. The hiding places are part of the language of the house. Everyone has one, but no one discusses them. There's an unspoken agreement: respect the silence, respect the stash. The girls may argue over hairpins or perfumes, but never over secrets. Those are sacred. Over time, Josie becomes skilled in this silent economy. She learns how to pry floorboards just enough to store something without weakening the wood. She learns which pieces of wallpaper can be peeled back without tearing. She even discovers that the lining of her own pillow can be unstitched and restitched in one evening, making a perfect pocket for folded bills or pressed leaves. The objects vary, but the intent is the same. Clara keeps the letters. Lily has the statue. Another girl hides a single earring she swears belonged to a duchess who once passed through town in disguise. One of the newer girls, barely 16, hides a tiny vial of perfume with a pearl stopper. A gift from a man who promised to return. He never did. Josie's collection remains modest. A few coins, a pressed wildflower from a Nevada hillside. A drawing of a bakery she sketched on the back of a used envelope. It isn't much, but it's hers. And more than that, it's a thread tying her to something beyond this place. A tether to a version of herself that doesn't just survive, but dreams. It keeps her grounded on nights when the laughter in the saloon feels sharp, when the music feels false, when the world feels too heavy. One night, while dusting near the front hallway, Josie overhears a customer boasting about his gold strike in Elko. He flashes a pouch, boasts that it's more than enough to buy his freedom from mining. Josie notes how the madam laughs politely, how the girls lean in all while their eyes flick briefly to his belt pouch. Later, when the man leaves with Lily, the others glance at one another, not with envy, but with calculation. Because everyone here knows the game. Everyone here knows what it means to have a plan, and what it costs to build one. Historians still debate how many women ever truly escaped these houses. Some argue that most stayed until they were too sick, too old, or too used to leave. Others point to census records showing former brothel workers running boarding houses, owning small businesses, or even working as dressmakers. The truth, as always, likely lives in the in-between, where dreams flicker, but don't always flame, where effort doesn't always equal escape. Josie doesn't know where her matchbox plan will take her, but she knows she's not alone. Each girl is a story in progress, stitched together with scraps of lace and fragments of hope. Some will vanish without a trace. Some will reappear years later with new names and new lives. Some will simply endure. And so Josie keeps adding to her box. One thread at a time. One coin, one breath, one night survived. No promises. No guarantees. But also no surrender. The coughing started quietly, just a rasp at first, so faint it could be mistaken for clearing her throat, or the chill in the early Nevada mornings. But it didn't go away. Within days, Mary's voice had become a brittle, papery whisper, and every breath sounded like it scraped along broken glass. She still smiled at clients, still dabbed perfume behind her ears, but everyone could see she was losing color. The rouge couldn't hide the bruised pallor blooming beneath her skin, and the room began to smell just slightly of sour milk and something darker, something that clung to fabric and lingered behind after she left. Madame Rosie noticed. She didn't call for help, not right away. In brothels like the Silver Queen, illness wasn't something you treated. It was something you concealed until it became a liability. Then you acted. Quietly. One night a man came to the back door, not a client. Not a regular, just a figure in a long coat with a hat pulled low and a tin case at his side. Josie saw him arrive through the slats of the pantry shutters. He entered without a word, went upstairs. Stayed for 10 minutes, then came back down holding a small brown bottle filled with thick black liquid. No label, no instructions. Just a nod to Madame and a muttered phrase, something that sounded like, "If it gets worse." Mary drank it anyway. Not because she believed it would help, because she had nothing else. For the next 2 nights, Josie was asked to bring Mary soup. Not much, just broth and a heel of bread. When she entered the room, Mary was always facing away, shoulders curled inward like a question mark blanket tucked under her chin. She didn't speak, didn't turn. But once, as Josie set the tray down, she saw Mary's hand reach out slowly and brush the pillow beside her. A movement too small to mean anything, but it stayed with her. Then came the night Madame Rosie called Josie aside after the girls had gone to bed. Her tone was flat, her eyes unreadable. She handed Josie a shawl and told her to wait by the back door at 2 a.m. Just wait. Don't ask questions. So Josie sat in the cold. The alley behind the Silver Queen was silent, except for the far-off clatter of saloon doors and the faint ringing of boots on stone. The stars overhead blinked like watchful eyes too distant to intervene. She pulled the shawl tighter and waited. At exactly 2, a wagon creaked up the alley. No lanterns, just the dull groan of wheels and the snort of a tired horse. The man who stepped down was the same one from before the bottle man. He wore the same coat, but this time carried no case, just his hands outstretched. Mary appeared behind Josie, led by Lily and Clara. She wore her good shoes. Her dress had been brushed and pinned, though it still hung loose on her shoulders. She didn't speak. None of them did. But as she stepped into the alley, Mary turned once briefly and looked straight at Josie. Their eyes met. No smile, no tears, just a single nod. Then she climbed onto the wagon and vanished into the dark. Josie never saw her again. The next morning, the room Mary had used was cleaned. Bedding, burned walls, scrubbed with vinegar. No one said her name. No one asked where she went. The mattress was replaced. The dresser rearranged. As if she'd never been there at all. But the silence wasn't emptiness. It was protection. In the world Josie had entered, there were no retirement parties, no hospital transfers, no loving farewells. When someone left sick, broken, or just worn down, it was always in the middle of the night through a back alley, with as few witnesses as possible. For some, it meant death. For others, if fortune favored it, meant escape. Historians have uncovered letters and police records hinting at these quiet disappearances. In several brothels across Nevada and California, sick women were sometimes removed under the cover of night. Officially, they were transferred for treatment. Unofficially, they were fleeing. Some even faked illness, hoping it would give them just enough leverage to be carried out the door by ambulance wagon or favor and never return. But no woman escaped alone. There was always someone who opened the door, someone who stood watch, someone who handed over a shawl and didn't ask questions. Sometimes it was a madam, hard-eyed but merciful. Sometimes it was another girl risking punishment. More often it was both. An unspoken alliance of survival. In the days after Mary's departure, Josie found herself watching the hallway a little differently, listening harder, picking up on which coughs were new, which faces looked paler, which girls clutched their sides when they thought no one noticed. She noticed. And when Lily asked her to pass a note to Madam Nothing Urgent, just a folded slip tucked into a glove, Josie did it without hesitation. Her hands had learned new languages, her ears new silences. No one spoke of Mary, but her absence rippled through the house like a gust of wind that extinguished a candle. Not devastating, just undeniable. A few days later, Josie slipped behind the pantry again and checked the alley. Nothing. No wagon tracks, no footprints. Just the scent of old wood and snowmelt, and a single button Mary's perhaps lying in the dirt. She picked it up, held it in her palm, then put it in her matchbox. That night, Josie swept the stairs again. The piano played faintly from above, muffled by laughter and clinking glass. Her steps felt heavier, slower. But there was something else beneath them too, a strange steadiness. Not confidence. Not exactly. Just anchoring. In brothels like the Silver Queen, everything could be lost in a single night. A coin, a tooth, a name. But something remained when a woman helped another survive, even if no one said it aloud. Historians still argue whether these underground systems of solidarity were organized or simply instinctual, whether the women in these places had codes or networks or just gestures and glances. But what's clear is that many escapes, many survivals didn't happen by chance. They happened because someone stayed up late, kept watch at the alley door, and said nothing when the time came. And so Josie stood a little taller that week, not because she had power, but because she had seen something quietly heroic, something no ledger or census would record, something that mattered. The matchbox under her floorboard now held a button, 2 coins, a bakery sketch, and a folded scrap of blue fabric. It still wasn't much, but it was becoming a story. One that started with survival and just maybe could end with escape. The matchbox under Josie's floorboard had grown heavier, not in weight, but in meaning. Each item, a button, a coin, a sketch, a ribbon, had become a symbol, not just of where she was, but of where she might go. And that night, while peeling potatoes in the kitchen after curfew, she found herself saying it out loud for the first time. Not in a grand declaration, not as a joke, just a whisper tucked between one breath and the next. She wanted to open a bakery. Lily bent over the wash basin with a chipped comb in hand, didn't laugh or ask why. She only gave a slow nod, the kind that meant she'd heard those words before, maybe from her own mouth, or maybe from someone long gone. She kept combing, but after a moment she spoke not directly to Josie, not really, but to the stale air between them. There'd been a girl once, Marlene or Marlise or something like that. She'd been here before Josie's time, full of plans, always talking about a tea shop with lace curtains and sugared buns. Said she had savings. Said a cousin in Carson City would send a letter when the time was right. But then she met a railroad man who promised everything. She dipped into her stash to buy a new dress, then more for travel fare. The letter never came. The man disappeared. By the time she realized what she'd done, her money was gone, and her credit with Rosie worn thin. She ended up in the cribs by the old mine where the girls went, when they were too old, too sick, or too tired to keep up. Josie didn't ask what had happened to her. The silence afterwards said enough. The next morning, Josie added something else to the matchbox, a stub of pencil and a scrap of paper. On it, she wrote 4 words: butter, sugar, warm bread. That was the dream. Not a mansion, not a lover. Just a small counter, a warm oven, and a bell above the door. Historians have documented the quiet transitions some brothel women made once they left the few who managed to step out for good without being dragged back by debt or illness. In Virginia City alone, there are traces of former workers who opened laundry shops, sewing stalls, or even food stands near the miners' quarters. Most didn't advertise their pasts. They didn't need to. They just kept their heads down and let the scent of clean linen or fresh biscuits do the talking. But those cases were rare. What Josie had to learn now, what Lily was gently trying to tell her, was that escape wasn't just about wanting something else. It was about building it piece by piece silently, while no one was looking, not announcing it, just moving toward it like a stream carving its way through stone. Still, dreams were dangerous. They made you pause at windows too long. They made you stash money where others might find it. And they made you trust people who promised to help, then vanished. That week, Josie began a new ritual. Every time she earned a tip, even a small one, a coin left on a pillow, a dollar crumpled in a shoe, she set aside a sliver of it. Not in her bag where Rosie might inspect, but sewn into the hem of her shift, next to the fraying seam no one bothered to mend. She used tiny stitches almost invisible, just like Lily had taught her, and she began to ask questions. Not obvious ones, but careful, polite inquiries. What's the name of that street with the cafe and red shutters? How long does the stagecoach to Sacramento usually take? Does anyone remember who sells yeast near the train depot? Some girls rolled their eyes. Others didn't answer. But a few, like Clara, gave quiet nods and whispered hints. Clara, who never spoke more than necessary, once slid a flyer under Josie's plate at dinner. It was for a bakery in Reno hiring part-time help. Josie stared at the paper, then tucked it into her boot without a word. There was no guarantee she'd ever make it to Reno, or own a shop, or even leave the Silver Queen. But a plan was forming, and that made everything different. She started noticing who asked too many questions. Which men promised rail tickets or city apartments? Which girls were suddenly short on cash after trusting the wrong smile? Rosie never said it out loud, but she had rules about those men. Some were blacklisted. Some weren't allowed upstairs. But even Rosie couldn't stop what happened when hope clouded judgment. One night, Josie found a girl crying behind the pantry, a gold bracelet hanging from her hand. The man who gave it to her had said he was from New Orleans, promised to take her there in the spring. But Josie had seen him last week with another girl, different promises, same charm. She didn't say anything, just helped the girl wash her face and tied the bracelet around her wrist with ribbon so it wouldn't slip off. Later, Lily told her that kindness like that was both a gift and a danger. "Don't get too soft," she murmured. "Soft girls crack." But Josie wasn't sure. Maybe soft was what let people help each other. That winter supplies got tight. The water pipes froze twice. Bread came in smaller loaves. One evening, a miner offered Josie a small sack of flour instead of coins. She took it and hid it under the bed, wrapped in a shawl. She began to practice recipes in her head. Cinnamon knots, honeyed oat rolls. Things she barely remembered tasting but could almost smell when she closed her eyes. Sometimes she wrote them down by candlelight, pretending she was copying poetry. Tidbits from interviews and court records reveal that in many frontier towns, women who left the trade quietly blended into domestic professions. Laundresses, seamstresses, even pie sellers. Some had saved just enough to rent a room above a shop. Others were funded by former madams, who, contrary to their gruff reputation, occasionally helped longtime girls start over, especially those who followed rules, caused no trouble, and stayed loyal. Historians still argue whether those acts of support were truly generous, or just calculated retirements to preserve brothel reputation. But for the women themselves, the motive didn't matter. What mattered was the rare moment when a door cracked open and someone offered to help you walk through. Rosie hadn't said anything to Josie directly, but Josie had noticed a small change. She'd been assigned to better rooms, more often trusted with the register once or twice. And during one particularly harsh snowstorm, when a man tried to leave without paying, it was Rosie herself who stepped in, not yelling, not threatening, just standing there, arms crossed, until the man reached back into his coat and dropped a crumpled bill on the floor. Rosie looked at Josie afterward and said only count it. She did. Every dollar. That night Josie lay awake longer than usual. The girls around her breathed in their sleep, soft and syncopated like a lullaby. But she couldn't close her eyes. She was thinking about yeast, about how it rises slowly and visibly in warm darkness, about how something small can swell into something nourishing if you wait long enough and feed it right. Her dream wasn't foolish. It was fermenting. And though she hadn't said it again to Lily, or to anyone she knew, that one day, if the right crack appeared in the wall around her life, she would take it. For now, she just needed to keep saving, keep quiet, and keep baking bread in her head. A soft wind slipped through the shutter that night, the scent of coal smoke and lavender oil. Josie turned toward it, smiling. It didn't smell like freedom. Not yet. But it smelled like maybe. The rains came harder in Yokohama than anywhere else you'd ever lived. It wasn't just the wet, it was the salt, too. You felt it in the seams of your sleeves, in the softened leather of shoes that no longer held their shape. In this port city, everything eventually rusted or sagged. But not you. Not yet. You are Hanai 17 or so. You say or so because no one here asks for a birth certificate, and even if they did, the paper burned years ago in the village fire. Here in the Shin Yoshiwara quarter near the port, identity is negotiable. You came with your hair tied in a long black braid, your best Yagasuri pattern kimono folded in a sack, and a school book of basic arithmetic pressed flat against your stomach, wrapped in an old scarf and hidden under your layers. You haven't told anyone about it yet. The other girls call you quiet, but they don't mean it unkindly. In this red light district, quiet isn't a flaw. It's survival. You listen. You smile just enough. You take mental notes, which men tip. Well, which prefer tea first, which ask too many questions. You greet the foreigners, Americans, mostly some British, by parroting the phrases you've memorized. Hello, sir. You like sake? Sit, please. You've practiced the accent by mouthing along with the sailors outside the Dutch merchant bars. You don't tell anyone about the man who brought you here. You just call him uncle if anyone asks. Inside the brothel, the floorboards creak like old ships. Paper walls divide the space just thinly enough to hear a sob or a laugh or silence which somehow says more. You've learned to read the sounds. The brothel madam is called Omatsu. She isn't cruel, but she is tired and she runs a tight ship. She checks your hands every morning for bruises or ink. She smells your breath. She reminds you not to linger with the foreigners, not to drink too much, and always to pretend you don't understand when they say too much. You sweep the entranceway bow to the lantern and put on your painted face light rice powder. Plum-colored lips, a dot of pink at the inner eye. You hate the taste of the lead paste, but there's no way around it. Even the foreigners expect the illusion. At night, your window faces the port. The light from the ships paints your wall with faint rectangles of movement. You trace them like a ritual. One evening, you count the lights and match each with a name: the Red Tail, the Viceroy, the Kanagawa Star. You imagine each one taking you somewhere else. You think of that American who gave you the English pocketbook. He was too old, too kind, and too lonely. He said he had a daughter your age. Before he left, he pressed the book into your hands, an arithmetic primer. He said, "You're bright. Don't stay here." You nodded but said nothing. After all, he still paid. And after all, you were still here. In the quiet hours, you unfold the book. You copy equations onto used napkins or the backs of food wrappers. You learn to calculate faster. One night you draw up an imaginary ledger. If you charged 10 cents extra per client, tucked it beneath the tatami every night, and saved for 112 nights, you could buy your way out. You could attend school. You could wear cotton, not silk. You could use your real name again. Historians still debate whether these arithmetic booklets were truly used by women in brothels as tools for freedom, or whether it's something we've projected backward, a modern wish imposed on silent ledgers. But when you lie awake tracing the lines of the figures with your thumb, you believe it. Because believing is half the trick. One of the other girls, Sayuri, keeps a bundle of letters under her pillow. She says they're love letters, but everyone suspects they're agreements, promises of redemption from a client. That's the new dream around here, being bought out not by luck or money, but by a promise. A man who signs a paper saying he'll marry you, take you away, build you a little house in the countryside. There are rumors it's happened before, that some girls in brothels were actually rescued like that. But no one in this house has ever met one of those lucky few. You're not waiting for that. You've watched Sayuri cry over the same letter 3 nights in a row. Instead, you count your coins. You've taken to slipping out after midnight, just past curfew when the port guards are asleep, and only the fish sellers are stirring. You walk quickly, your hair wrapped up under a hood. No makeup, just another market girl. You head to the stall where the newspaper boy leaves his scraps. He doesn't talk to you. He doesn't need to. You take the papers, circle the parts you don't understand, and later match them to the English words in your pocketbook. One day you find an article about women clerks in America, typing, filing, earning their own wages. You can't quite believe it, but the words are there. You saved that clipping in your sleeve. Back at the brothel, Omatsu catches you, once mud on your heels, ink on your fingers. She looks at you hard but says nothing. The next morning she tells you to stay an hour later in the kitchen. That's all, no punishment. But later you find a fresh scrap of paper under your tea bowl, already half written in phonetic English. No one saw her place it there. You still say nothing. You keep the arithmetic book hidden beneath the 3rd floorboard under your mattress. The loose one. You check it every morning. You count your coins again, 24 cents now. Not nearly enough, but more than yesterday. You start practicing a sentence I would like to apply for study. It feels strange in your mouth. You whisper it when no one's listening. You've stopped looking for a savior. You're building the door yourself. One night a new client, a retired samurai with hands like rope and a face scarred across one cheek, sits in your room and tells you you're wasted here. You smile, say the polite thing, but something in his eyes is different. He hands you a letter. I know someone in the academy, he says. If you can read this, maybe they'll let you sit in. You nod, not daring to believe. After he leaves, you don't open the letter. You just hold it. You've learned not to get excited too soon. But that night the ships outside flicker differently. The rain doesn't seem so heavy. The salt doesn't sting. You sleep with your pocketbook under your pillow and the letter pressed to your chest. In the next room, Sayuri sobs again. In the room across the hall, someone hums a lullaby to herself. On the roof, the cats hiss at something unseen. You breathe in. You count to 10. You whisper, I would like to apply for study once more. This brothel is not the end of your story. It's just the comma before the clause. And as you drift off, your fingers press against the soft spine of the arithmetic book, worn and smudged, but still legible. Like you. The next morning you start again. The floorboards creaked differently here. You weren't in Yokohama anymore, and the smell of sea salt and tatami was replaced by powdered faces, rose perfume, and stale champagne. Now you are Claudine, and tonight you step into the light, not just any light, but that sharp honey-colored beam that pours across the velvet curtain at Le Chat Doré. Your corset is drawn so tightly, It feels like a second spine, and the sequins on your bodice scratch beneath your arms with every movement. But the moment your heel touches the stage, the pain disappears. The music starts a slow accordion tune, lazy like summer in Montmartre, and the crowd hushes. You don't need to be told how to sway or when to turn. You've rehearsed this for years, watching others imitating their poise. But now the rhythm is yours. Off stage, you're a different creature. Clients wait in private rooms named after cities they'll never visit. Venice, Cairo, Vienna, their fantasies stitched into velvet curtains and painted ceilings. You slip into Alexandria, tonight's theme, where palm fronds painted in green and gold rise behind the silk-draped bed. The man who waits is older quiet. He places the payment neatly in francs on the marble side table, and you smile not at him, but at the tiny sum moving you one step closer to a room of your own. Outside, Paris is shimmering in Belle Époque excess. Cabarets erupt with color, and electric lights make the night seem endless. But none of that reaches you directly. You live in borrowed rooms and under borrowed names. Claudine is not your real name after all. It's the one Madame chose because it suited your figure. No one asked what you wanted to be called. In the dressing room, mirrors line the walls, but none reflect the same woman. You dab rouge onto your cheeks with practiced efficiency. The tint is made from carmine-crushed cochineal beetles, and it smells vaguely metallic like pennies warmed in the sun. A girl beside you, barely 16, uses the same shade. She whispers that she wants to be a singer someday. You smile again and nod. You used to say the same. At night you count your earnings. Carefully. Fold each bill. Separate the tips from the base wage. There's a drawer under your cot where you've hidden 3 envelopes. One for rent, one for emergencies, and one labeled La Fenêtre. The window. You dream of a tiny apartment with a real window that opens. One with a lace curtain. You chose not the heavy burgundy one stained with secrets. In this world, beauty is armor. The right perfume, floral, faintly musky, can distract a client long enough to avoid his questions. You know how to walk without letting your hips sway too freely. How to speak with a hint of mystery. Some nights men pay just to sit beside you as you eat grapes or read from a magazine. It's not romance. It's theater. And you're always on stage. They say some girls leave this life behind. A few buy cafes in Nice, or marry wealthy clients who see them not just as decoration, but as women. But you've seen how that goes. One girl vanished last spring, said she'd be the mistress of a count. But by autumn, her name was back on Madame's lips. Her room became Lisbon. No one asked where she went in between. The older girls talk in code. You're climbing, they say, if a client gives you jewelry. You're sinking if you've had too many brandies with too few francs to show for it. You know better than to ask what they mean exactly. You just listen, observe. And you observe everything. How Madame never drinks. How she always knows who's upstairs, how long they've been, and whether they'll pay more for another half hour. There's a story that she once paid a policeman's wife's hospital bill to stop a raid. No one knows if it's true, but everyone repeats it. Like a chant. Like a prayer. One night you overhear 2 men in the bar. They talk of wars in Africa, railroads to Spain. One mentions you in passing, the girl with the purple fan. You are for a moment a part of their world, and yet never truly within it. You sometimes visit a boulangerie 2 blocks away, not to buy anything bread costs too much, but to look at the girl behind the counter. She wears no makeup. Her hands are dusted with flour. Her apron is clean. You wonder if she ever dreams of velvet gowns, or if freedom tastes more like warm croissants and less like absinthe. You write sometimes, on hotel stationery. You don't know who you're writing to or what you'll do with the pages, but words spill out anyway. Not poetry, nothing so elegant, but lists. Things you'll own, places you'll see, names you might try. Some nights are quieter than others. A drizzle settles over the rooftops and the gaslights blur behind the glass. In Vienna, the violinist plays slow waltzes even when no one is dancing. You lie on the chaise, breathing in the scent of amber and old roses. You wonder if you were born in another century. Would this have been a palace? Would you be a courtesan still, or someone's wife, or someone's ghost? Historians argue about women like you. They ask whether you were liberated or trapped icons or victims. But you know the truth is slipperier. You made choices and then made the best of those choices. Autonomy isn't always about control. Sometimes it's just surviving until morning. The window you dream of, it's not grand. It opens to a back alley. But in your dream, the curtains are sheer and the breeze smells like lavender. In the dream, no one is knocking at your door. No one is asking for an hour of your time. No one is choosing which city you'll pretend to be tonight. And one day, maybe you'll wake up in that dream. But for now, you take off your sequined gown, fold it neatly, and tuck it into the drawer. You count the francs again. Not enough yet, but closer. Tonight, you fall asleep in Cairo. Tomorrow, perhaps you'll earn enough to move to Paris. Not the room, the real thing. You're no longer Claudine beneath the Parisian gaslight. Now the scent is no longer rose perfume and cabaret smoke, but incense sharp-heady with a sweetness that coats your throat. You are Aylin, 18 years old, and your world is marble floors and thick silence. The courtyard of Topkapi Palace is vast, but you only know it in glimpses when you're moved from one wing to another, veiled and instructed to look only at the floor. You were brought here after your village was scouted. Not taken by force, no, your family was paid. Your mother cried. Your father nodded. It was an honor, they said. Not many were chosen. The recruiters said you had delicate wrists and obedient eyes. That was enough. Now months have passed. You no longer remember how long. In this part of the palace, there are no clocks, just the rhythmic toll of prayer and the soft chiming of gold bangles as the elder attendants pass. You are not yet a concubine. You are an assemi, an apprentice in everything but name, a student in a school where the curriculum is silence. No one touches you, not in comfort, not in cruelty. At first, this was the hardest part. You shared a dormitory with 16 other girls, but it may as well have been 16 ghosts. The first rule they teach is this: your body belongs to the Sultan. Until he chooses to look, you are invisible. To reach for another's hand, even in friendship, is to forget your station. Instead, you are taught to read things other than touch. The glance of an older girl means don't speak. The pause in a servant's footstep means someone important is near. Every eye movement is a message. You learn the language of stillness, of how not to breathe too loudly, how to kneel with grace, how to rise without sound. There is music, yes, but you are not allowed to dance. Not yet. You sit cross-legged in a long hall with tapestries of birds and clouds and listen to a woman play the oud. You study the arc of her fingers, the way she sways but never closes her eyes. Feeling is permitted only when it is controlled. If you cry during a lesson, you are dismissed for the day, not in punishment, but to compose yourself. Emotions are only acceptable when rehearsed. The walls of your quarters are painted in delicate blues and white tiles, shaped like tulips and vines. But you're not allowed to open the windows. No one is. From your room you hear the fountains but cannot see them. Some girls whisper stories of other sections of the palace places, with sun libraries, even kittens. But you have not been there. You might never be. Your tutor is a eunuch named Kemal. He doesn't speak much, but when he does, the room listens. He teaches calligraphy, not just how to write, but how to write beautifully. You practice the same line every day. Silence is the first step to power. Your fingers stain with ink. Your shoulders ache from sitting straight. But each night when you return to your mat, you stare at your hands and feel something. A pride, maybe. Or just exhaustion that looks like pride. The other girls have different coping rituals. Some braid their hair in silence. Others hum lullabies from homelands they're not supposed to speak of anymore. One girl hides dried orange peels beneath her mattress. She says the smell reminds her of home. You want to ask her where home was, but you don't. You've learned not to ask too much. You're told that in time you might be presented to the Sultan. Not because he loves beauty, though he does, but because the harem is part of statecraft. A girl who catches his attention might bear a child. A child might become a prince. A prince might become a sultan. And you might become the mother of an empire. But only if you master restraint-control discipline. This doesn't feel like power to you. Not yet. There are older concubines here who've never been summoned. Some are in their 40s now. They teach the younger girls how to embroider, how to pour tea without rippling the surface, how to blend scent oils, amber, rose, sandalwood, without letting one overpower the others. They are kind but distant. Their lives are bounded by archways, their memories trimmed down to the color of curtains, or the shape of a necklace once worn. You wonder if they remember what laughter feels like, if they still imagine escape, or if they stopped imagining long ago. There's a room called the Hall of Mirrors. You've never been there, but it's spoken of in the dormitory as a dream. It's where selected girls are groomed, where music, poetry, scent, and silence are tested in concert. Some say the mirrors aren't even glass, but polished silver that shows only what the Sultan wishes to see. You think it's a metaphor. You hope it's a metaphor. One evening during your embroidery lesson, you feel a breeze. It startles you, air moving that isn't from a fan. A cracked window in the hallway was left ajar. You steal one glance and see a tree. Just the edge of it, dark leaves against a dusty pink sky. It's the first tree you've seen in nearly a year. The sight jolts something inside you, but you can't say what. Later you write about the tree. Not in words, but in stitches, green silk woven subtly into your cloth, hidden between two tulips. It's your secret, your rebellion, your hope. Sometimes girls vanish. No one explains. They are either promoted or sent away. You're told not to ask. One girl you knew, Layla, was always humming, softly, almost inaudibly. One morning her bed was empty, her shoes neatly aligned beneath it. You still wonder if she was chosen or discarded. You begin to feel changes in yourself. Not visible, but deep. You flinch less when someone walks behind you. You answer questions without needing to pause. You fold your silks with sharper edges. Your emotions become thinner, quieter. You start to forget your old name. You no longer ask if the Sultan will ever choose you. The question feels distant. Then one afternoon, Kemal hands you a fresh set of robes. Not brighter, but finer. He says nothing, only nods. You don't know what it means, but you fold them, carefully aware that the path might now shift. That you've been deemed acceptable, not worthy, just ready. As you dress that evening, you catch your reflection in the polished brass basin. You don't look different, but you feel like a painting someone else is still working on, shadows added, where none existed, highlights blurred. Aylin, the girl who once cried silently into her sleeves at night, is now a figure who smiles only when required, who bows perfectly, who speaks with the calmness of water held in a stone bowl. You have become what was asked of you. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the layers of training embroidery, incense and powder, you still remember the wind that touched your face that one afternoon, the sliver of tree, the pink sky. And in your dreams you don't walk through marble halls. You run through green fields, with bare feet and real laughter. That you promise yourself is a dream worth remembering. You are no longer in Istanbul's echoing halls or beneath Parisian chandeliers. Now the air tastes of heat and dust. You are in Calcutta, 1882, where the streets overflow with rickshaws and red uniformed soldiers, and the monsoon rolls in without warning. Your name officially is Sita Das, but the soldiers don't call you by it. If they call you anything at all, it's nurse girl, or simply a nod toward the door. You came here after answering a notice, an opportunity, they called it, for native women, with modest English ability and a willingness to serve. The posting said, hospital assistant. Your aunt read it aloud twice, her eyes, careful, unreadable. You nodded anyway. The hospital compound isn't made of marble or lined with polished wood like you'd imagined. It's a dusty structure with iron bars on its windows and mosquito nets that sag. You sleep in a side room just beyond the dispensary where the quinine is stored, and the British doctors rarely step. The cot is narrow, the walls damp. But at night it's yours. The day begins early. You prepare bandages, pour boiling water into chipped porcelain bowls, lay out lint compresses and sweep. You sweep constantly because the dirt never leaves, and the officers hate dust, or say they do. What they truly hate, you learn, is being reminded that the world outside their regiment is larger than the one they command. Most days the soldiers pass through the dispensary only for salves and to flirt in broken Bengali. They smell of tobacco and wool. Some are gentle, some are cruel. All are temporary. Then there are the evenings. After dinner, after gin, some officers don't bother pretending. The dispensary becomes something else. The gas lights are turned down. You stay in your room, back against the wall, listening for the creak of boots. If you're lucky, no one knocks. If you're unlucky, a junior officer enters with the smug weight of empire in his shoulders and a handful of coins that never reach your hands. The matron, a woman named Mrs. Stokes, says nothing. She wears linen gloves and records everything in a ledger bandage, rolls doses, administered days of rest taken. But not what happens between the lines. She isn't cruel. She simply doesn't look. You aren't officially on the payroll. Not in any real sense. Your name exists in a side column of the register, S-DOS, assist, nurse native quarter. No benefits, no pension. You receive your meals and a small weekly allowance, enough to buy tea leaves and thread, not enough to leave. You keep your name private. You give fake ones when you must. But in the small metal box beneath your cot, you keep letters written to yourself. Sita addressed as Sita, because someone should remember. You should. You aren't alone. There are other women like you in Calcutta, in Bombay, in Rangoon. Women with calloused fingers and powdered faces who press gauze by day and serve whiskey by night. Some say they're maids. Others are cultural liaisons. One woman from Lucknow, older and sharper than most, told you she once trained in a real infirmary, but the British captain preferred her without gloves. You never asked what happened to her. You already knew. The building next door is an officers' club, an angular thing with red brick and hanging lanterns. The windows are always open. Music leaks out in the evenings, British songs you can hum but don't know the words to. Once, while sweeping near the fence, you overheard a woman singing in French. Not one of the Indian girls. Not like you. She wore a blue dress, high neck too fine for Calcutta heat. You watched her sip wine and pretend not to sweat. You don't hate her. You envy her. Because even if she is also for sale, at least she costs more. Sometimes you do provide medicine. Not all of it is pretense. You crush bark boil petals, stir chalky mixtures, and apply real bandages. You've watched skin heal under your fingers. You've soothed fevers with cool cloths. Once a young Scottish soldier with a broken foot cried when you touched his temple. He hadn't been touched gently since arriving. He tried to write you a thank you note, but Mrs. Stokes intercepted it. Inappropriate, she muttered. The letter was burned. You didn't mind. You'd already memorized the words. There is a book beneath your pillow, a medical text left behind by a departing missionary. It's in English, filled with diagrams and technical words. You trace the inked illustrations with your finger each night. Skull, clavicle, uterus. The parts are familiar, even if the language isn't. You study it by candlelight, your lips silently mouthing the terms. imagining a version of your life where you wear gloves and a white apron and speak to patients with authority, not fear. But this is not that life. You hear stories from the other compounds. Some women escape. They board trains with names not their own. A few are taken as mistresses, kept women with silk slippers and mosquito nets that don't sag. One girl you knew, Mira, married a Portuguese merchant and left for Goa. She sent a letter once pressed with a flower. You read it until the paper wore thin. You don't believe in fairy tales, but you believe in flowers pressed between paper, in small things that can be carried in the pocket and remembered in the dark. You've learned how to stay invisible during the wrong hours and how to become visible when necessary. You powder your cheeks with rice flour. You line your eyes not for beauty, but so they look wider, more awake. You let the soldiers think you don't understand English, even when you do. It's safer that way. The ledger where your name is written in faint ink now holds a note beside it, duties extended. No one asked you. No one had to. At night you lie on your cot and listen to the ceiling fan churn the thick air. The city outside keeps moving rickshaw wheels, rattling temple bells, chiming distant laughter from the bazaar. You imagine a life where you step into that laughter, where you walk into a street and no one sees you as an extension of their convenience. Just a girl, Sita, alive. You do not cry. You haven't cried in months, but some nights your breath trembles. That's all. That's enough. One evening you see something that shifts your breath again. A poster pasted crookedly on the hospital wall near the entrance. It's for a missionary school, free training for native girls with reading skills. It's likely a trap or a prayer circle or both. But you tear the corner off anyway. You hide it beneath the medical text, and for the first time in weeks, you let yourself wonder, what if there are rumors that the British administrators are reclassifying support workers, that some women might be recognized, given papers, maybe even pay. You don't believe them. But you allow the thought to settle inside you like a stone warming in the sun. You are Sita Das' assistant nurse, but you are also a ledger, a locked cabinet, a metal box beneath a cot. You are letters with no return address, a face powdered just so, a girl who remembers her name even when others do not. And when the dispensary doors close for the night and the gas lights flicker out, you sit with your knees to your chest and read the same page in your medical book over and over again. Circulatory System Chapter 2, because blood always moves forward. So will you. You've entered a room without windows, but it doesn't feel dark. The light glows softly from oil lamps pressed into the plaster walls, and the shadows shift gently as if they're shy to speak. The year is 1856. The city is Isfahan. You are not royalty, but you live closer to its silk edges than most. You are Layla. But no one calls you that here. Here they call you Jasmine, because of the scent that trails behind you when you pass. In the Qajar court, names are negotiable, but fragrance is identity. You reside within a pleasure quarter, tucked discreetly behind the Chehel Sotun Palace. It is not a brothel in the way Westerners think of brothels. It is more like a scented corridor, a hidden annex where nobles whisper what they cannot declare in court. The women here are not merely touched. They are watched, memorized, mimicked. Each of you has a different note, neroli saffron rose. Yours is always jasmine. You learned early that your voice is not your strongest instrument, nor your beauty, though many call you beautiful. What draws the men back is subtler the scent that escapes when you turn your head, or when you press a folded cloth to your lips before sipping tea. They speak of your modesty. They don't understand its choreography. When you arrived, you were 16, carrying nothing but a bundle of clothes and a silk handkerchief your aunt embroidered with tiny blue knots. The mistress of the quarter, an older woman named Farrick, rubbed your wrists with crushed petals and wrapped them in gauze. For days you weren't allowed to bathe. She wanted the oils to seep through your skin, the scent to root itself into you like memory. It worked. Now, when you walk past a lattice screen or shift behind a beaded curtain, people know without seeing. Jasmine. You sleep in a room lined with mirrored panels, not for vanity but for light. Even the dimmest candle seems to multiply here, casting gentle reflections across your face at dawn. You have no window, but you've placed dried herbs near the ceiling vent, so the breeze smells faintly of lemon verbena when it rains. There is a drawer in your chamber lined in velvet, where you keep your cloths. You own 7 now, each soaked in a different variation of jasmine. One is infused with a hint of bergamot, another with a wisp of cinnamon. They are not for your comfort. They are tools carefully deployed depending on the guest. When an elderly vizier visits you, choose the cinnamon blend. It reminds him of his mother's garden. For younger men fresh from Shiraz or Mashhad, you wear the pure jasmine steeped overnight in rose water. Not because it's seductive, but because it smells expensive. No one asks you to perform overt acts, not here. The performance is softer. You are expected to know the music of a man's sigh before he exhales, to recognize which cushion he prefers, to serve sweetened almond tea without letting the clink of porcelain break the silence. Everything you do is observed, measured. Farrakh once told you that in this house pleasure is not given, it is evoked. You did not understand her then. You do now. You've heard stories of the other quarters, rougher places near the bazaars where women must sing loudly and fight for coin. Some say they work faster, but you've seen those women after dark, tired and hunched, their perfume replaced by ash. You feel no pride in comparison, only relief. Some nights when you cannot sleep, you press the edge of a scented handkerchief to your mouth and breathe in slowly as if you could inhale another version of yourself. One not bound to this tiled chamber, one who speaks her name aloud and is not corrected. The scent calms you, but it does not lie. It only reminds you that the version of you the world believes in is not the one you truly are. The noblemen you serve rarely ask where you're from. That would make you real. They prefer to believe you are conjured from the steam of bathhouses and the rustle of drapery. One man, a military officer with a pale scar along his jaw, once said, "You reminded him of his mother's garden." He seemed embarrassed after. You weren't. Gardens at least are tended. Your hours are predictable. You rise before dawn to soak silk cloths in shallow bowls of oil. You prepare tea for the women who wake after long visits. You sweep. You pray. You write short verses in the margin of a ledger you're not allowed to own. Your name is never entered in official accounts, but your scent is known by everyone. The kitchen girl says she smells you even when you're not there, that when the wind shifts, she can tell you've passed through the corridor. This makes you strangely proud. You've saved money more than the others know. You press coins into the hem of a decorative pillow and tuck it behind a drawer. You're not sure what you're saving for. Maybe for freedom. Maybe just for the possibility of wanting something else. Farrakh is kinder than most madams. She speaks Persian with the smoothness of an educated woman and never raises her voice. She taught you that the women who leave this place do so one of 2 ways: with a letter promising marriage, or with a cot when they are no longer wanted. You've seen both. One girl, Nilufar, received a note from a minor prince. He sent Fabric a servant and a promise. She left 3 weeks later trembling, but dressed in gold. No one heard from her again. Another girl named Pavane fell ill. The cart came for her at dawn. She had no scent left. There is a whisper among the girls that scent can bind or free, that if a man inhales the cloth you wore against your skin, he dreams of you, that if he carries it home, you remain lodged in his mind like a sacred verse. It's superstition, but you still tuck one handkerchief into your sleeve before every session, just in case. Outside Isfahan glows. Isfahan. The domes are tiled in blue, the air thick with smoke and cardamom. You haven't walked beyond the courtyard in months, but you still remember how the bazaar smells when the pomegranates are cut open at noon. You miss those things quietly, not aloud. When the sun sets and the lanterns are lit, you stand behind the lattice screen and wait. If no one calls for you, you sit with your back against the plaster and dream of wind, of jasmine that grows wild, not bottled. Sometimes you wonder what your real name smells like. But then a guest arrives and the silk scarf at your wrist is unknotted just so. You bow. The scent floats upward. He smiles not at your eyes, but at the ghost of something he can't name. And once again you disappear into the performance that has become your survival. You lie on your side, your back to the room. The old wooden wall is cool against your shoulder, worn smooth by time, and the bodies of girls who leaned here before you. You're Josie, still 17, still in Virginia City, still breathing. The room is silent in a way that never feels truly empty. A floorboard creaks far down the hallway. Laughter echoes from the saloon 2 stories below, soft and distant like voices carried through water. Someone's footfalls drum across the upstairs corridor, slow, heavy, unbothered. Then gone. You pull the blanket higher, though the night isn't cold. Just the idea of being held even by fabric comforts you. Your hair still smells faintly of pennyroyal and cheap lavender oil. Your hands ache from scrubbing a floor that isn't yours. Your lips are stained from a beet-colored balm that promised allure, but delivered only chapping. You do not cry. You are far past tears tonight. There were tears once on your first night here when the walls felt too close, and the breath in your chest turned to stone. When Madame Rosie handed you the same dress every girl before you had worn, and Lily whispered the tricks of ribbon tying and chin lowering as if she were passing down a sacred script. When you first understood that this was not a temporary stop on your journey, but the journey itself. But now you lie still, and you think tomorrow you'll wake up and do it again. Not because you want to, not even because you have to, but because you can. And one day, maybe not soon, maybe not when you're 20 or even 30, but one day, you'll walk out. That's the secret no one tells the girls when they arrive, the quiet power of surviving just one more day. Not escaping, not fighting, not plotting some heroic exit. Just staying alive through another round of candle smoke and stale perfume and counted coins. You heard the story again today, the one Lily always tells new girls, about the woman named Marie who came here with no shoes and left with her own bakery in Carson City. The truth of it doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that everyone repeats it as if it's scripture, and somehow belief becomes muscle memory. You still hide things, not in drawers, those get checked, but in the seams of your dreams. A list of ingredients for a honey loaf memorized and tucked behind your ribs. The name of a town in Oregon you once saw on a flour sack. The exact shade of paint you'd use if you ever had a shop window. Pale peach. You cling to these details like talismans. They are yours. No one can take them unless you give them away. From your bed you hear Clara cough in her sleep. The same dry, tight cough that's haunted her since January. You make a mental note to slip her an extra lemon drop tomorrow. You saved it last week. You were going to eat it after the midday shift, but she needs it more. This is how kindness happens here, quietly, in unspoken exchanges of sweets buttons, whispered warnings, no declarations, no grand gestures, just one girl surviving beside another. At the foot of your bed, there's a small wooden box. The hinge squeaks when it opens, so you don't touch it now. But inside are your treasures. A handkerchief stitched with your mother's initials folded tight. A pencil nub. A tiny glass vial with 3 dried blueberries blackened with age, still fragrant when warmed in your hand. You've had them since the train ride west. Sometimes when you're alone, you press them to your cheek. Not for comfort exactly, but for proof that there was a before, and perhaps still an after. You've been here almost a year now. You no longer count days. You count seasons. And with each passing month, your mind grows quieter, more exacting. You notice things others miss. Who keeps a second coin in their boot lining? Which miners drink before noon? Who lies when they smile? You notice which girls are leaving too, not all at once, never announced. But you see the signs. A suitcase kept close. Hair styled in the morning, even on rest days. Conversations growing shorter. A new name practiced in front of a cloudy mirror. And then one morning their bed is empty. No one says goodbye, because goodbye is dangerous. It suggests someone found a way out, and that makes the rest of you feel your own chains more sharply. But tonight you allow yourself the smallest of maybes. Maybe you'll be next. Maybe not tomorrow, but one day. You roll over slowly, eyes adjusting to the faint lamplight, seeping through the crack beneath the door. You hear Rosie's soft voice in the distance, giving orders in a tone that makes grown men nervous. You hear laughter again, closer now, maybe the hallway. Or maybe just a dream you haven't woken from. There's a quiet kind of promise in this moment. Not hope exactly. Hope is too loud for this place. But presence. You are here. Still here. And the world has not yet undone you. The girls used to talk about the journals, the old ledgers kept in a drawer behind Rosie's desk, left behind by women long gone. Pages filled not with names of clients or lists of services, but with sentences written only to themselves. Things like, "I will not forget what I wanted," or "I am more than what they see," or simply, "One more month and I'll have enough." You've never seen the books. Maybe they're real. Maybe not. But the idea stays with you, that somewhere someone once wrote a promise into the dark and kept it. And if she could, maybe you can too. Outside your windowless room, Virginia City is falling quiet. The lamplighters have finished their rounds. The streets echo only with the rustle of wind pushing through alleyways, catching loose skirts and scraps of song. Somewhere far below, a piano plays itself out in half-forgotten chords. You hum along, barely above a whisper. You think about how far you've come from the girl on the train. The girl who believed she was going to fold laundry and save money for school. The girl who stepped off the platform and never found the woman holding the promised sign. The girl who walked into Madame Rosie's and didn't know she was staying. She didn't die. She's still in you. But she's quieter now, wiser, and she's waiting for you to keep walking. You don't know how this ends. You don't know when the bakery will open, or if the bakery will ever open at all. You don't know whether your name will ever be stitched on the front of anything, or if the world will let you leave without demanding too much in return. But tonight you know this. You survived. You protected what was soft inside you without letting it spoil. You kept the sweetness, the heat, the rise of it all tucked deep behind your ribcage like dough waiting to swell. And even if no one ever calls you by your real name again, you know it. You carry it. You carry. You are not lost. And that is something. So tonight you sleep. You let the world be loud and far away. You pull the blanket to your chin and let your eyes close slowly, gently, like curtains at the end of a play. And you dream not of escape or revenge or romance, but of warm bread, of a bell over a door, of a room filled with light, of your hands dusted in flour. Tomorrow will be long, but tonight you rest. And maybe, just maybe, so do we.